Chapter 9, Kinesiology 223, Chapter 9, Book Presentation 11, last one, best one. We're going to talk a little bit about strategies for enhancing cohesion, some shared team values and guidelines for building team cohesion, although we've talked at length about a lot of that as we've gone through some of the other slides. But let's jump right in and get this done. They compare different strategies for cohesion in exercise and sport, and I thought this was a value to kind of highlight here. When you talk about exercise settings, we talk about one-on-one personal training, and there's a dynamic regarding one-on-one personal training where you have people who pay money to come in and see a personal trainer, so they've been incentivized to come in and see a trainer, whatever amount. If it's 80 bucks an hour or $100 an hour for a fitness facility, or maybe it's a little more for in-home. The point is they have a financial obligation, so as a result, they'll show up for their workouts. Otherwise, they lose that money. In a partner setting, you have two people working out with one trainer. You have one person holds the other one accountable, and that increases the retention rate, if you will, and also the participation rate. And then you get into maybe 3 people in a group, or perhaps 4, and you continue to see this increase in terms of participation and accountability between participants in a group. But you think back to the Ringelmann effect, and what happens is when you get into larger groups, because people will kind of come in, oh, I can't make it today, okay, fine, I'll come in. When you get into larger group training type settings, you'll have a little bit of more fluidity in there because it gives people the opportunity to then reprioritize. Well, okay, you have your 5 people, I'm going to go ahead and bow out, I have to go shopping and take care of some stuff for my kids, I'm not going to make the session. When I talk about group training, like group exercise in a class setting, cycle, perhaps you're doing like a body pump class or step aerobics, whatever it may be, what they found is you try to find ways to increase the interactiveness, the socializing component between the people in the room. So now it's not a bunch of individuals all in the room just kind of doing their workout, although some people prefer that. They like that anonymity. But when you have a group setting and you have this group setting where it's a bunch of individuals, but you find a way to connect all of them, you increase the accountability. And things like at the end of your workout session, you get to the end of the class and one of them says to the other, okay, great to meet you. Are you going to be here next week? That's an accountability component that wouldn't be there in a one-on-one situation or just a person working out by themselves. And it helps with the exercise adherence as well as the cohesion, or the cohesion helps with the exercise adherence in a group. In the sports setting, very much a lot of things like we've talked about. You have coaches kind of learning how to implement team building programs, find ways for coaches to be able to increase, if you will, the relationship building between their athletes, but also the relationship building between the coach and the position coaches, the head coach and the athletes, and the position coaches and their athletes as well. So it's not one-dimensional, but you find different ways to increase that feeling of being connected and part of something much bigger, which increases the cohesion that you have in a group, which increases the accountability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what you're really after is trying to find ways to get people to connect. So in here, let me get myself out of the way. They try to lay it out in a little bit of a chart pattern, or chart, excuse me, and they talk about these different strategies: distinctiveness, individual positions, group norms, individual sacrifices, interaction, and communication. I'm almost certain you're going to see some of these in a testing environment somewhere else. So like distinctiveness, you have a group name when you're working out. We'll do like challenges in the fitness world where it's like 4 people in a group, you get points for working out, and you come up with wild or quirky different group names. You could have t-shirts for your groups, etc. You find ways to create an identity for the group. With things like group norms, you find ways to interact, have your people interact with each other. Okay, you're working out in a big classroom environment, say hello to the person to the right and for the person to the left. You want to have like a fitness buddy or fitness friend. Then you can start to promote different things in terms of working with each other. And they go further into other things down here. And I think you'll find those of value if you review that on table 9 too. You'll find that up here, page 210, I believe it. It's on the right-hand side, 211. So team building in sports, and you can kind of compare and contrast these, right? Because you had exercise earlier, and now this is table 9.3 in terms of team building for sports. Same idea. We talked about conformity to group and social task norms. You know, what if you're playing at Alabama? You know what your norms are there, and you know what the expectation is there. Role clarity, we talked about that. You know, so they're kind of doing a pretty good job here of kind of tying this all together. And again, much like I said with the other table, I would urge you to maybe just take a few moments to kind of review this and kind of tie it into some of the lecture material that we went over, because it should help you to kind of frame things up a little bit better. So practical ways to achieve team building, and they give many of these. The big ones that they lay out here, and they talk about group norms, individual roles, distinctiveness, individual sacrifice, communication, and interaction. And they elaborate a little bit further on each one. You know, have them work in small groups to describe how ideal teammates will react. Some of these, I don't know if I would go that far, but you'll find group norms will just kind of naturally bubble up when you're working together in a practice environment. Excuse me. Individual roles, you know, they talk about how you can get together as a group, and they talk about how, like this, I want such and such name of a player on my team because he's exceptional at whatever. Again, are these things that are predominantly used or used a lot? I don't know how many head coaches do them. I know this is something I've never done as an athlete or a coach, but I can see some of the value that they have, and they're trying to push through on this. In terms of 213 and 214, at about 213, the book starts to provide some insight regarding shared team values and teamwork training in sport. And, you know, shared team values, it's very much like everything we've talked about in terms of cohesion and everything leading up to this. So it's a little bit redundant here, but, you know, you look at this and go, but before team building activities and goals are identified, team values need to be developed and understood, because values clarify the path to achieving goals and are critical to building trust among players and coaches. You know, I agree with that, and I agree with the concept of being able to have some team building in the process, but it's a matter of what type of team building you'd like to put in place as a coach. And I get into teamwork training in sport towards the bottom down there. With teamwork training in sport, I would take a read to that, but again, I mean, a lot of times when you talk about teamwork within the sport environment, teamwork is inherent to that environment anyways. So as a result, it starts to kind of bubble up. You can probably spend a little bit of time in that, but I have to say, when you're in a coached environment, whether it's high school or college, you have limitations of how much time you can spend with your athletes in a coached environment. And per NCAA regulations, you know, if you're in meetings or on a practice field, that goes into your practice time. And you become cognizant of how much time you want to allocate to certain things that might not provide you the yield that you want. So I would urge you, if you're going to get into like team building and stuff like that, you probably want to research it heavily first to make sure you're doing things that are going to be of value in that practice environment, because you only have a finite amount of time. So what you can do as a coach or a leader, right? You got to communicate effectively, explain roles, you know, get some pride going in those subunits in terms of, we're going to get 2 interceptions this game, or we're going to have X amount of blocks or kills, blocks in basketball or kills in volleyball, whatever it is. You know, you want group goals and also subunit group goals that are appropriate and challenging and achievable. You know, I'm going to have 10 interceptions this game. Well, you know, that's kind of unrealistic, to be quite honest. But if you set up some goals that maybe you'll have X amount of interceptions, X amount of turnovers, that can include interceptions or fumbles, all right, now you're talking. That's a little bit different animal. And so you can find different areas of opportunity within that construct. You want to have a group identity. You know, you're not making it this kind of like homogenous where everybody's the same, where all the different groups are the same. And I even said it from year to year and team to team, you'll have different identities for each team, let alone each group within a team. You try to get away from social cliques within a group. It shouldn't be based off of clickiness. It should be all about the camaraderie and working towards a common goal. Transformational leadership is a big thing we talked about earlier. You try to minimize that turnover. I talked about it in the last presentation, I believe, where you have like your group of people who are able to implement the cultural norms for your team. But what ends up happening is because they're sticking around longer, it's not just the basic cultural norms. You can actually evolve those cultural norms over the course of 2 years, 3 years, etc. So you try to have a nice core group of people. Turnover will happen no matter what, but you want a nice core group of people to be able to really drive that culture and hold people accountable to a set of cultural norms going forward. As a coach, you're going to have team meetings. You're going to have individual meetings. You're going to have group meetings. It's going to be a world of meeting with people for any number of different reasons. You get to know others in terms of having a little bit of vulnerability about yourself and being able to disclose a little bit about yourself. You don't have to give away everything about yourself, but if you disclose a little bit of the backstory, etc., it helps to make you more vulnerable and more human. And then oftentimes, and we talked about it very early on in presentations, self-handicapping. I can't do that. There's no way I can do this. You start to hear that from one of your athletes. You have to take that and tamp it down right away and find ways for them to be able to find successes as opposed to self-handicapping. All right, that's it. Chapter 11, done deal in the book. Hold up. Not chapter 11 in the books. Chapter 9 in the books. Presentation 11. Chapter 11 is coming up. Catch you later.